So yeah, so we've seen who the enemy is, but we still need to, look at the back alleys of the enemy in order to get familiar with the enemy and see if we can befriend PowerPoint. So now we'll go over to PowerPoint. Okay, any questions meanwhile? Any questions? You can just keep that coming. All right, so when you open PowerPoint, you're going to see some sort of variation of this, right? This screen, you're going to see some sort of variation of this particular screen, okay? And if you look at it, it's very similar to what we have seen earlier from Word, from Excel. The view is very similar. The thing is very similar. Today I'm on my laptop, so this is a MacBook. But for those of you who are on Windows, the next session I'll do from Windows. But for those of you who are on Windows, this is what you would recognize as the backstage view. Mac does not really have a backstage view. So Mac, this view opens up when you first start up PowerPoint or Word or Excel for that matter, anything. So now from here, if you recall what we had discussed while we were doing Microsoft Word, if you recall from there, this is the place where you can do a couple of different things. One, you may want to create a new PowerPoint, right? So in order to create a new PowerPoint, there is the new button over here, and there are templates that you can use to create a new PowerPoint, okay? So they say it's themes, but it's actually, these are all PowerPoint templates. Why are they called themes? They are called themes because each template also has an associated theme. It will change its color, it will change its style, the entire thing will change, the font selections will change, right? So that's the reason why these templates are more correctly called themes. So you can choose to do all of that, or you can choose to just open an existing PowerPoint. Now, like I had mentioned for Word, the computer would always think that what are you more likely to open? You are more likely to open a document that you have recently opened. So your recent documents would show up here. And I had mentioned that if you want one document, so important that irrespective of whether you have opened it recently or not, you always want it to be accessible, right? So just click this pin icon, push this pin icon, so it will always remain over here on pinned on, and it will always remain on top of recents. Okay, so you're never going to really lose it, but even if you don't want to search over here, just go on to pinned and you will always find that. So once that document has served its utility and you no longer want to have it pinned, just simply press that again to unpin that document. So creating a new one, opening a new one. Now, what if opening a new one is not a document that you've created recently? So in that case, you are going to go ahead and use the open button. You're going to use the open button, and that will show you the entire folder structure. So if it's local, if it is on your OneDrive, wherever it is, it's going to show you the entire folder structure, and you can go ahead and open any document from there, right? So there will be certain documents which are shared with someone. Of course, you wouldn't see this unless you are on Microsoft Excel 365 or Office 365, sorry, not Excel, or one of the collaboration plans, right? So if you've got collaboration enabled, only then you are going to see something of this sort. Even with, I think with the education license, A1 license, also some form of collaboration is enabled. I'm not sure, but only for the online version of PowerPoint, not for the installer version. So if you have collaboration, then you will see shared. Otherwise, you will not see shared. If you are on Windows, you will also see those account and options and those kind of things over here. In Mac, you wouldn't see those, but the options here are under preferences. So whatever is available under options button on the backstage view here in Windows are under preferences on Mac, for those of you who are using Mac. So now let me go back home and let me just quickly take a look at all of the themes. So these are all themes. You see the thumbnails, they show you the cover slide, the cover slide. So, and for many of you, a lot of these might be very familiar. Like I've seen this many, many times. Many presentations I've seen, whether it's in the classroom, students presenting, or in other places, other people presenting, seen this one being used a lot. So that really is both a positive as well as a negative of these built-in themes, right? So built-in themes, the positive is that they are all available to you and they are easy to use. They're there free. So you would probably want to use them. But remember, just like how they are available to you, they are also available to everyone else, right? So every other person thinks that, okay, I'm only using, nobody else is going to use. And then if you have like a room full of people presenting, you will have 3 or 4 people who have chosen the same template because that looks nice. So it's good because it simplifies things, but it's bad because it does not make your slide deck stand out, at least from a design perspective. From a content perspective, of course, that's in your hands, but from a design perspective, it does not make it stand out. But be that as it may, these are still going to be a good starting point. Like, for example, I don't see many people use this template, but that's probably because this template has been around in the newer versions. This template has been around in very old versions of Microsoft PowerPoint, probably because of the popularity. So if it's popular, they also don't want to remove it. But if it's popular, many people are going to use it and it's no longer unique or something which stands out. So that's just a call that you will have to take. Or like most of us do, you could also choose a blank presentation. So you can just begin with a blank presentation and then it's just going to open the blank slide for you. And we'll see how to navigate, how to go forward from there. We'll take a look at that shortly. But before that, I just want to talk about opening PowerPoint. Now, I had mentioned this even for Microsoft Word. Most of us, how do we tend to open a PowerPoint? We will go into whatever is our, whatever is our slide folder, maybe your documents or wherever it is. So you will go ahead, you will open something there. You will say that, okay, this is the PowerPoint that I want to open. And then you will go ahead and double click and it will open in PowerPoint. Fair way, no problem. But every time if you are quitting the software, then remember every time it is going to take a slightly longer time to open back up. Okay, if you do not quit the software, that's okay, right? That's all right. Then there's no such problem. But every time if you quit and reopen, then it's going to take a slightly longer time to open back up. So on Windows, if you close this, if you've closed all of the open windows of a particular software, like if you have one window of PowerPoint open and you close that window, then PowerPoint will entirely shut down. On Mac, however, it's slightly different. So here, right now, I have closed PowerPoint window. But if you look at it, PowerPoint is still running, right? PowerPoint is still running. PowerPoint itself has not shut out. So if I want PowerPoint to shut, I can quit PowerPoint. But if I want PowerPoint to stay, it will stay open. So now, just look how quick it is to resume. Because the software, the software PowerPoint engine did not really shut down. So how do you open new documents without the PowerPoint engine shutting down? Over time, you will also notice some small improvements in your laptop battery, because even though it gives you a couple of seconds at a time, but everything adds up in a sense, right? And every time the software is opening a file, the software itself does not have to open up at the back. So here, how do you really open then an existing one? Go into open and then just go ahead and click whatever is your actual folder that you want to navigate to the correct folder and open from within the software itself. So that's always going to be a more efficient way of opening a PowerPoint, right? Okay, so now let me go ahead and first let me go ahead and first show you a blank PowerPoint. Let me show you a blank PowerPoint. So there's a question, what is proxy? Proxy in what context? There's a proxy in the context of networking, proxy servers. I don't know in what context are you asking about proxy. Okay, I'll let the participant clarify proxy in what context. So in what situation, what made you think of proxy? Are you talking about a proxy server? I don't know. Okay, so meanwhile, I'll just show you from a blank PowerPoint presentation. So you open a blank PowerPoint presentation, this is what opens up. I'm sure all of you would be intimately familiar with this. You would have all seen this many, many times, right? You'd have seen this many, many times. So all of these, what you see here is a placeholder. It's a placeholder. So it says click to add a title, click to add a subtitle, right? Click to add a title, click to add a subtitle. So what is it? How do we typically make a PowerPoint? I'm going to show you how we typically make, and then we'll take a look at how not to do that and what is a better way to do it. But first, let's just see what is the basic way of doing this. So click to add a title. So you click here. The insertion point is ready. It's blinking. It's allowing you to set a new title. So you say, right? So that is click to enter title. And now click to enter a subtitle. What is the difference between a title and a subtitle? So title is your main title itself. So title, again, we had discussed this in great detail when we were talking about Word. Remember, why is it that we are back to a lot of similarities in terms of the discussion content with Word? Because like Word, this is content heavy, right? In terms of a written content heavy meant for public consumption, whereas Excel was on analysis heavy, right? So that's the reason why there were no such things for public consumption in Excel. Maths, cut and dry kind of a thing, right? So we didn't really have all of these things in Excel, but we have it here. So title, short, and yet explanatory, should tell you sufficiently about what we are going to do. And then a subtitle could be longer, should ideally supplement the title. So it should add some more onto the title. Okay, so whatever is your title, your subtitle should add more to that and tell you more about that. So this becomes your cover slide, your title slide, right? Now you can do a variety of things. You can, suppose you don't want this here, want this at the top, and bring it at the top, right? You don't want this here, you bring this over here. You want this in a different font, go ahead. By default, remember, Office theme by default, Calibri is the font, so that is what opens up here. And the default for heading is 60-point Calibri light. So you can go ahead, of course, make any changes, whatever you want to change, whatever you want to put over here, you can go ahead and put. Remember, think back to our discussion on fonts that we had discussed. I had said that any document that's going to be printed would ideally benefit from a serif font. Any document which is going to be read on the screen ideally benefits from a sans serif font. So you can take a look at the various sans serif fonts like Arial, Avenir, all of these are sans serif fonts. Bodoni is a serif font. Chalkboard, again, the same kind of issues. Chalkboard looks kiddish. Chalkboard is, like Comic Sans. So Comic Sans is also kiddish, but you would be surprised how many, and honestly, I'm not joking when I say this, you wouldn't believe the number of official documents, right? Serious official documents that I've seen written in Comic Sans. A lot of people actually think that Comic Sans is very readable. The readability is very high. So even though the document is an official document, they end up having that on on comics or font. So that's something which is very interesting, but don't do it. Avoid doing something like that. Again, none of the very fancy fonts like this, unless you are doing a project meant, or you're making a document meant for school children, or you are using PowerPoint to print a poster or something. A lot of people use PowerPoint, this slide itself, to become like a poster, and you can just print it the same way, like a something to be stuck somewhere. Then you can go ahead and use. Otherwise, don't use any fancy font. But anyway, whatever is the font that you want to use from here, you can choose from all of these fonts, right? And let me choose Georgia. Okay, so and then you can go ahead and increase or decrease the size with the increase or decrease buttons, and you can directly also modify the size of it. So now if you notice, interestingly over here, right, the maximum size you will get is 96. Okay, does that mean PowerPoint cannot go any further? So you see there is nothing after 96. Okay, and nothing below 8. So 8 to 96 is the range over here. Does that mean that PowerPoint cannot produce larger fonts? That's absolutely not true. So you can go ahead and make larger fonts by using the increase font button. So you see we are already at font size 166. Okay, so should you need a larger font, you can go ahead even after 96. So here you see it's showing 96, but I've been able to do 166 with this. You can also, of course, go ahead and type a font size on your own, right? So you can go ahead and type a particular font size that you want to type in. Okay, and same way again, while reducing, same thing. 8 is over here, but you can actually come smaller. Okay, not like there's any reason to go smaller than 8. There's no reason to go smaller than 8, but just to say that if you want to, you could get smaller than 8, whatever is written over here. Now, the font size on PowerPoint is always a topic of discussion. Many people are not clear about what font size to use and how big it should be and things like that. So either people will end up having comically large font sizes or terribly small font sizes. So we'll talk about how to select and how to really make decisions in terms of what font size to use. There are certain rule of thumbs also, but all other rules of thumb, they will not apply for every context. Like for example, one such rule of thumb says that the font size should be at least equal to or greater than the age of the youngest person in the room. Okay, so if you are going to present to a room full of people, the font size that you use, the minimum font size you use, should be equal to, the minimum font size should be equal to age of the youngest person that in the room. Now, of course, there are limitations to it, so shouldn't take that very literally. Like imagine there's a group full of senior people and one person has come with a 5-year-old grandchild. That doesn't mean that this rule of thumb says that 5 should be the minimum font size of your presentation. That's not what the meaning is. But yeah, generally you get the idea. So the idea is, as people are more and more senior, in a room presentation, eyesight gets weaker. So you have to make sure that the persons at the back is also able to view the slides comfortably. Therefore, the font sizes have to be large enough. Of course, this is not a scientific rule, just something which is said often as a rule of thumb kind of guideline. Okay, so you can move all of these as I have mentioned. You can move all of these. Now let's assume you are happy with the title as it is, right? If you're happy with the title, now you want to have a next slide. So in order to go into the next slide, you click a new slide button, right? You click the new slide button. And when you've clicked the new slide button, you notice that a new slide has appeared, but this slide does not look like the previous slide, right? It is different looking from the previous slide. Why? Because by default, PowerPoint will think that only your first slide will be the title slide, right? After you've had a title slide, now you want to go ahead and add content. So that's the reason why after title slide, it will start showing you content slide. Now, once again, content slide has the same thing. It has a title uh, placeholder. So you can just say whatever is your title of the slide. And if you see here, it says click to add text. So this is the text placeholder. Interestingly, by default, the text placeholder is not in the form of paragraph. It is already bulleted, right? You see that it already starts with a bullet. So that is your hint for understanding that a PowerPoint slide should never contain a paragraph. Okay, now, of course, again, like every other thing, when I say it should never contain, there are caveats to it. Some of you might as well argue that my own slides sometimes contain maybe a paragraph if I'm quoting someone, maybe only an image, and maybe a whole lot of things, right? So again, those are just guidelines, and there will be exceptions to every rule, and we'll discuss the exceptions later. But by and large, the rule is that this has to contain only bullet points, right? So if you have a few bullet points in mind, it's as simple as just starting to type. So you start typing, click enter, start typing another one, start typing another one, start typing another one, start typing another one, right? Now this one, you want indented bullets like how we had done for Word. So you go ahead and click tab. Right now, if you press enter, it's going to go ahead and start in that. Right now, you want to come back, you can of course use these also, right? So come back and you have managed to get back to the original one. Now you see your space is over within these few bullet points. That's another way in which PowerPoint is telling you that be brief when you are writing over here. If space is over, that means that's all that you are supposed to write. Again, there are exceptions to it, and we'll discuss those exceptions. Right now, I'm just talking about the top line generalities. Okay, the top level generalities is what I'm talking